Welcome to Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Sloppy Spoilers. Tonight we're going to be looking at The Wheel of Time, Season 1, Episode 2, Shadows Waiting, which could be subtitled Good as a Point of View, Anakin, but we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Let me get my co-hosts in. Let's say welcome to Dave, Nemesis Howard. What's up, Dave?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I got my Jedi robe on here in preparation. It's a little cold here in Southern California, but I'm ready to talk about this episode and about wizards who give zero blanks about what they do to people.
Let's welcome to Dr. Steve Shadewing Sellers. What's up, Steve?
Well, there are more dangerous things than Trollocs in this world, as we find out in this episode. But yeah, I've been doing pretty well. I'm really looking forward to continuing discussion of this. This is a really interesting series, and I don't mind getting into it.
Welcome to Jeff, Dr. Fate Bracey. How you doing, Bracey?
Feel the power of the dark side of this fully functional magic system. Remember, it's not evil, it is necessity.
And with that note, we're going to dive right in. I'll give my initial thoughts and I'll pass it off to my co-host. My initial thoughts about this episode was I really liked that the camera is going simultaneously wide and deep in terms of the mythology and the lore. In terms of the characters, they still haven't hooked me beside Moraine and Land, but I'm willing to give that a little bit more time, which is rare. Now, that's when you know you've created a story world that's so fascinating that even if your characters don't fully hook you or engage you, the journey that they're on does. So I got to give kudos to the source material and the adaptation for at least having that, because as Dr. Steve said last time, first 100 pages of the book is boring. So I'll put that. I'm really thinking about trying to read those volumes, even though it's 14,000 pages, but who's counting? So what we learned in this episode, I think, is pivotal. So one of the things that I liked in terms of initial thoughts is how we get a greater sense of stakes. So the first episode gives us the first layer of stakes. But when we get to this episode, there's a whole nother layer of stakes going on that we weren't aware of before. And I really like that. In terms of things I might not have liked, we'll talk about it in detail in a few minutes, but there's an awful lot of things that are awfully convenient. Awful convenient things happen in this episode as well. So I'm going to throw it out to my co-host and very briefly, just give me your initial thoughts on the episode, and then we're going to do a deep dive. Start with Nemesis.
Yeah, I guess my initial thoughts, I'll just build on the thing I was joking about. I think it's interesting that they're building on this idea of the common man and what they have to put up with. They have to live their day-to-day lives versus the actions and concerns of their quote unquote betters and what they do and how that affects the common man. And I think that's such an interesting thing to play with. You know, it's been played with a lot in other places, but they definitely do it here. And there's one scene in particular where you see that, yeah, you empathize, or I guess you understand why one character does what she does, but you're like, that's just not right, you know? So, yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting into that. I think that's kind of what this episode is about. And then you had the dream sequences. I thought that was interesting. Of course, I'm always down for some good demonic possession or something like that, you know, in my stories. So,
go ahead, Bracey. Initial thoughts about this episode.
Yeah, I'm like you. I like both the expansion of the world and the lore, and like Nemesis, I also like the plight of the common man versus the forces that are just at play. Because it's a very real world allegory that we can all stand. Because most of us in our day-to-day lives would like to just be kind of left alone to make our own way in the world and not be subject to whatever's going on in the broader world or with your government and things like that. And this is playing out very well here in a framing that's similar to Game of Thrones in a lot of ways. So I really appreciated that. As like Nemesis said, it's not something we haven't seen before. But if it's done well, it's always an intriguing story to see how people are swept up into events that they have no control over. And then what are you going to do? Because that will really test your mettle like nothing else will.
What I find interesting is you guys now have twice referred to the common man versus others, whatever, and I don't frame it that way in my mind at all. What I see is who's got what agenda and how much power do they have to accomplish it.
And that makes all the difference.
Like to me. Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Steve. Initial impressions on this episode.
I would consider this the Breaking of the Fellowship episode. You can definitely tell that a lot of fantasy writers, let's face it, are steeped in Tolkien and like to bring Tolkien in. This episode, I would say, is a little more Tolkien-esque than some, in the sense that, you have the Fellowship going out on the journey. They run into their obstacles, and because of the obstacles that they face, they're forced to go their separate ways at the end and go it alone, essentially. I feel like that's basically what we're dealing with here. The thing is I like the execution of it. I like that we see that Moiraine is definitely not Gandalf in the scene that Nem refers to. I like that we get to see them bond a little bit more with the Song of Minetheren scene. I feel like that kind of worked a little bit, or at least that's starting to get things to work. And then this whole adventure in Shadar Logoth, which is the Dark City that they have to travel to get away from the Dark One and his minions. All of that is really, really good, and the setting is so really interesting. And beyond that, there's also the White Cloaks, as I refer to them as the fantasy Spanish Inquisition of this episode, and so you have a lot of different factions, as you say, DT. There are a lot of different things going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in the story world and new developments that we don't know before, and a few little nuggets that we didn't know before about the characters. And I think that it's better than the first episode, but it's still got a ways to go yet, and it will in the next few episodes, I think.
Cool. Let's dive right in. We're going to start with that cold open. Holy cow. Now, one thing that I know is that it's true with shows and it's true with people. You will have moments in your life with the people closest to you where they tell you who they are. For example, one of my closest relatives was one day baking some bread, but she was baking it with so much gusto. I've never seen anybody just knead bread, and she was jumping up off the ground and she was going at it. And I was like, "You making some bread?" And she looked at me and she said, "David, all I ever wanted to be was a mommy." And see, that was my moment where I understood what she was. No matter what she had to do to cook for her family, that was the joy of her heart. People, you have those moments with people, you'll have those moments with shows. And I keep trying to tell people that Smallville told you what it was going to be in the first episode. Smallville was never anything different than that pilot episode, but we kept expecting it to turn at some point, but it didn't. This is the episode where this show tells you what it is. And it's all wrapped up in that cold, open, holy cow. So we got Amon, am I saying it right? Amon Valda, one of the questioners, and like Steve said, Spanish Inquisition or witch hunters. They seem to be to the Aes Sedai like the paladins are to the jumpers, that nobody has a right to that kind of power. And there's no tougher nut to crack than a religious nut, a religious zealot that, you don't have the right to be who you are. And it's our sworn duty to stop you. I got all that. I was like, oh, okay. But the thing in this scene is the gore. Okay. So we see he has an Aes Sedai or a channeler, and he's already taken her hands off at the wrists. So she's already dismembered. He eats a bird with the talons and the bone still in it, to the point where they cut his mouth and he's bleeding as he's chewing. I'm like, holy cow. And then they use the juxtaposition of his very dark skin against his very white clothes, which always represents extremes. When you have a visual cue like that, it's telling you that this character is a character of extremes. And then he does the thing that all bona fide sickos do. He circles as he talks, as he tortures. See, that's the difference between psychopaths and sociopaths. and a whole bunch of different people. Because Michael Myers just comes straight at you. Then he tortures the next person with your corpse. Okay. But this guy, he's savoring how you're dying. And I'm like, holy cow. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, this is a thing. And this is a major player, but this is the, how can I say it? It's when anytime you see a death in a Whedon show, Whedon has spent time building up that character, and then he takes him out. The Walking Dead did the same thing for a long time. As soon as you got character focus, you know they're about to die. But here, in a few moments in the character we don't know anything about, we are told by all the visuals and all the way the scene plays out that there's a whole new level of stakes. There's a faction out there who believes they're right about everything, who has no regard for human life, particularly for the Aes Sedai, and they're determined and committed. But they're not just going to stop you. They're going to dismember you and torture you. And I was like, holy cow. So it just blew me away. It took me a few days to get that scene out of my mind. I was like, oh, because every time I looked at a piece of chicken, I was like, y'all got some talents in there. I ain't need them talents. I ain't trying to bleed out the mouth. But that's just me with my silliness. So yeah, so it just really made an impact, and it was just so intense. And I was like, this episode has already put the bar up there, because people are going to get hurt, and you're going to see them get hurt because the level of gore in the opening scene. So those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours. Start with Bracey.
Yeah, that definitely, like you said, that set a whole new tone for things. Considering the battle of the last episode, which was graphic but in the dark, it was occluded by shadows and firelight, so they could get away with being pretty graphic but not very openly graphic. This was shocking, and it really makes a statement, because this is in the bright light of day, and like you said, again, that statement of having a very dark-skinned black man dressed in pristine white robes, real impactful sort of statements going on here. Again, I'm going to throw this one back to Game of Thrones, where George R.R. Martin thought it would be interesting to have the bad guys dressed in white, the white cloaks, normally the symbol of purity, and he subverted that sort of thing, and that seems to be what they're going for here. And it's a direct opposite of when you see the bad guy wearing all black and he's got like a white skull kind of mask or face. It's an inversion of that sort of thing. Now, the obvious religious zealotry here of, again, these guys who are wearing the pureness of the white, and that absolves them. I feel like this is a little bit of a stab at some medieval Catholicism, and like you said, the Inquisition, because nobody expects the Inquisition. I had to go there. It absolves them of their sins. There was a thing when people went off to the Crusades, they would go get blessed by the cardinals, the popes, the fathers, whatever, and they're like, whatever you've got to do, all your sins are forgiven as long as you're doing it in the name of the Lord. And that's the kind of vibe I'm getting here. And some people lean into that. And like you said, this man is not a psychopath who just, I'm going to kill you and you're dead, and I move on, I kill the next person and you're dead. But it's the sociopathy where he does savor it. He delights in it. And we see this contrast between the others of his order who are not cruel zealots. They see this as a function. And that played out kind of interesting, and we'll get into later, I'm sure, where even though they're hunting down the Asharai, like the guy sees his wounds, like, oh yeah, we're hunting these witches, but you better find one really quick, because that wound's going to kill you. Hopefully you'll find a place where we haven't been yet. But yeah, what a dramatic turn. And I kind of, just as a storyteller, I have to applaud the open. If you're going to go there to just get so in your face like that, and what a change from the dark chaos to this pristine, well-lit scene of such gruesomeness. And now, like you said, okay, the stakes have just gone up to here, and they were already pretty high. So, great cold opening, in my opinion, and a great villainous introduction. Really well done villainous introduction.
That's right. Go ahead, Nims.
I think I took a little bit. I mean, I agree with everything you guys said, but I took a little bit different look at this opening scene. And that the thing that really struck me about this character in this cold open is that he considers himself virtuous, and I think that's important. You know, and it's symbolized by the white robes. You know, and you see something similar. You know, the example that comes immediately to mind is like Rogue One, where the main guy wears white all the time. The guy who's designed the Death Star. Yeah. But you know, this is a particular kind of evil where he considers himself virtuous. He considers what he's doing is for the betterment of the world and mankind. And later on in the episode, you contrast that with, and this is kind of where I was getting into the common man. And you know, it's not necessarily the common man versus their betters, but it's like this the perception of the general public at large of who's doing what and what they're willing to support. I would be willing to bet that the common man supports the questioners, supports these people, because they see these witches as having too much power, as having things, you know, doing things that hurt them in their common lives, and they don't care about what the greater battle is, and so they give power to people who in their hearts are not good people. They're evil, but those people consider themselves virtuous, and the common man is willing to turn to them and give them power because it helps them, you know, from a very narrow point of view, from their focus. Getting rid of these witches helps them because all they see is that, you know, the witch destroyed my town, the witch, you know, was fighting these bad guys and my crops died, you know, whatever it is. So I think that's a very interesting commentary on, you know, you could apply that to history. You could apply that to now. You know, it's like, who do you put your faith in? And are you really looking behind the scenes of what the motivations of these people are? Because we're also willing to put our faith in this person or that person, this cause or that cause. And sometimes, even though it may appear on the surface that they're doing the best for us, that may not be entirely true. And their motivations may not be entirely pure, you know, or we may not have all the information. So I think that's very interesting.
Definitely that last one. We don't have all the information. We're going to talk about that some more when we get to the next scene, which is the scene you referenced, because it's the ultimate good as a point of view scene so far, number one. And number two, what I enjoy is the subversion of the idea of good guys and bad guys, because you have to throw that out. Maybe you thought you could tap into it in that first episode. This episode, you have to throw that out because it's not that simple. And once again, I have to applaud that writing. I have to applaud that adaptation because I love that. It's nowhere near as simple as good guys and bad guys or white hats and black hats or us and them, because everybody's got something going on. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, in terms of the comparisons, I think everybody has said a lot of really good stuff, and I pretty much agree with those things. But I thought where Nem was going, and this is where I'll go instead, is that you were going to draw a comparison to the operative from Serenity. That's what I see when I look at Eamon Balda.
Whoa, that's great.
And it is that kind of cold open that establishes the character and how bad he gets, and how they are both deriving ultimately from a higher authority. You know, they're deriving, you know, they're justifying their actions because they believe it's in, you know, the best interest of the world, or, you know, the world's in the case of the operative to do that. We're building better worlds. So, I mean, all of you can die and I don't care, as long as ultimately the world is made better, you know, by my killing all of you. And I think Valda, I actually think in some ways is worse. What were we going to say now?
I was going to say, I think the only difference is the operative in Serenity knows that he's a monster, but thinks that he, you know, I don't know that this guy knows he's a monster. Maybe he does. It would be interesting to see more of him. So.
And the operative's not cruel. This guy's intentionally cruel. The operative,
he's not a torturer, no, or at least not a torturer by design.
There's no shame in this, you know. He tries to comfort you in his own weird way as he kills you. Unlike Yvonne, killing
you with kindness. You know, basically with the idea of. I'm just going to do this because it's necessary, Mao. You know, I'm going to do all of these things. I know that I am a monster, but, you know, I kill children and it's okay. But it's because the what I build is going to be better. I don't think that Valda necessarily is that self-aware. The operative is actually one of the more self-aware villains that I've seen. But I don't think Valda is. And I think that a lot of it is, justifying his psychopathic tendencies, his cruel nature, and trying to basically justify it. But I think there's a lot of similarities, both in the scene, in the setup, how it establishes how awful the character is, and also a little bit of their methodology and their ideology. And that they're both, driven to do good, but are willing to go to any lengths in order to achieve it. And I think in both respects, I think that kind of scene works.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put too much on it. It's always so tempting to put too much on a fiction novel, but it's just so true through all of our history. We put so much faith in these people who say they're going to do these horrible things or these things in order for us to make progress or to lead us to a better society or a better way of life or whatever it is. And it's like, we always make the same mistakes. It's just so interesting. It's just maybe it's endemic to human condition. So
we should be terrified if anybody says they're doing something for the greater good.
Those are the kind of people I distrust the most. Is the ones that they're saying that they're doing everything for pure motives and claim to have no ulterior or anything.
Okay. Now that's the key point. In nature, as with these other things, there is such a thing as a purge. That on some levels is what winter is about. Because the earth shuts down, it gets rid of old things. The birds and the bees and the squirrels go away. A lot of things fly south, things in the air, things on the ground go deeper underground. And so it's not necessarily a full wiping out, but it is a reset, if you will, to prepare for spring, for new life to spring forth. So in nature, we kind of have that concept. Unfortunately, when we do it as humans, when you're talking about something like that, the question is always, who's greater good? And that's the perennial question that we argue about from generation to generation. Because whenever any type of new order is established, if you're talking about a hostile takeover in the boardroom, if you're talking about, like, I've seen it and I've done it with like new choirs. You come in for a new semester and you have some veterans, and you always have those people that are always talking and always interrupting you and being rude. You have to get rid of them quickly. Otherwise, they're going to disrupt the flow of what you're trying to do. And they're going to be offended because they feel like they ought to be able to be rude and loud and disruptive while you're trying to have choir rehearsal. So I'm saying it's an idea that exists. It's just, what level or extreme do you take it to? And when it's all said and done, like all three of you were saying, what's the agenda? Because what we do as humans is try to act like there's no agenda.
And I think
ridiculous.
I think a lot of that comes with, I'm finding this with my kids as they grow up, is that, believe it or not, you actually do gain wisdom as you grow older. I never thought I'd gain any wisdom, but you do, because you have experience, and you've seen it, and I don't want to get to modern things because that takes us down a rabbit hole. But, you look at like train barons from the 19th century. It's like, yeah, the train coming to your town was good, but they weren't doing it just to bring stuff to your town. They wanted to get rich, so it's like, did the evil they're doing outweigh, does the good that they're bringing outweigh the, their personal motives and everything else? You got to weigh those things, and being able to look at both sides of those issues is a thing that comes with wisdom and age and knowing and seeing and experiencing those things over the years,
I agree with everything you just said, except the part about it coming with age, because that's not true. Because I know plenty of old people that are just as silly. And when people get full of zealotry, particularly religious zealotry, your mind has to close to that. We got too many examples in the news of how people are always saying, this is okay, and I've justified it in my mind, and there's something wrong with the rest of y'all.
Well, I guess you hope it comes with age. I guess that's
okay. Because we know stories of people that are still arguing with their parents, and your parents are 70 and you're 50 and y'all still going round and round because they never accepted who you were, or they weren't happy with their lives. So it doesn't come with age. It comes with a willingness to be open to grow, that kind of thing. But there's too many people that have lived many years who are convinced that their worldview is right and there's something wrong with everybody else, which leads me to our next scene, which is the scene that Nem referenced in the open, and that is that we truly see, to me, it smacks so much of the Sith and Jedi thing. And I'm anxious to hear you guys' analogies as well, because it was the good as a point of view kind of thing. It was Christopher Reeve Superman saying in that first interview to Lois, Lois, I never lie. Except the part where I'm pretending to be Clark. And I lie to y'all every day, except that part. So you see that it's not, especially if you have that kind of personality, you want truth to be this cut and dried thing. You want truth to be this black and white thing. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. So that's why Superman can say with a straight face, I never lie. When every time you put your glasses on, you lying. You're trying to hide who you are. And then so Moraine basically uses the ferryman, uses this guy who has a house by the water and who's waiting on his son to come back. So his family's there. We established that. Here come the Trollocs. At first, I wasn't accepting they don't like the deep water thing. But then when I looked at their thighs, calves, and the shape of their hooves and the way that goes and the fact that they're top heavy and they have weapons, I said, okay, all right, they probably wouldn't be able to swim that.
They didn't have swimmers' bodies. So
right, like I'll give you that. And you got all that weight on your back, and I'm trying to imagine trying to float with all that. So I give you that one. Okay. Because that was my first little mental convenience. But I said, oh, okay, all right, well, Moraine must know what she's doing on some level. So okay, I'll give you that one. So then what she does is she basically intimidates and bullies and manipulates this guy into taking them across. And then when he does, she's like, if you go back, you're going to give him a way to follow it. So we can't have that. So boop. So she uses the one power. She uses the force to say, okay, well, no more bridge, no more ship, no more nothing. They're going to stay over there. And he's like, my family's over there. My son's on the way. And she's like, yeah, too bad. So sad for you, dude. So then he does what anybody would do, which is try to get back to his family. But she has already created a typhoon, a little mini typhoon in the water. And he goes down with his barge. And Gwen is like, what are you doing? And Moraine responds, just like Obi-Wan did, just like Yoda did. She's like, I didn't kill him. He chose to pursue an unwise path and therefore died. I'm like, holy cow. Luke kept saying, Ben, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't y'all tell me? And Yoda was like, because you weren't ready for the burden. When you saw him climb up in the X-Wing, you should have told him. The reason we don't want you to go face Vader is because that's your dad. And Luke would have said, what? But they're like, no. So Vader tells him. He's like, what? And so that's the way I felt watching this scene, because you just told me, even though you told me to come out of my village and one of us might be the dragon and we have to go, you just told me that you will sacrifice me if you think you need to. I was like, holy cow. So, so again, I loved it. As a fan and as a writer, I loved it, because now we have solid moral gray Jedi, if you will. We have solid moral ambiguity. We have a solid sense of she's going to interpret the situation while claiming she's sticking to her creed of not lying. That means, like a pretzel, you got to twist the truth to stick to that. Okay, so let me hear you guys' thoughts on that. Start with Steve.
Yeah, that goes straight back to the books. The whole business of the oath that the Aes Sedai take to say no word that is not true. Yeah, but you can twist it like a pretzel, like you said. You can. Yeah. Oh I'm not really an Aes Sedai. I'm just going to see my sister up in the city, and she's going to take care of me. Yeah, right. We knew that you meant that the sister in the sisterhood. Yeah, we know all about that. So this is the kind of stuff that they do in this order. But I find that interesting about the Aes Sedai. I mean, it's like it's built on this really noble idea. Okay, you can tell the truth. You can't speak anything that's false. Yeah, but these people are all masters at lying to you with perfect accuracy. All of them. And there are worse Aes Sedai than Moraine. Much, much worse than Moraine. And so, so you're getting the idea that she's one of the good ones, and you're seeing that she is capable of utter ruthlessness, utterly dispatching this poor dude who just happened to be in the wrong path. And it's just, as a character moment, it's really interesting. It's horrifying And you can completely understand why Rand is like, oh yeah, she's going to basically ditch us the minute that we get to the Dwight Tower. I don't trust her. I totally understand that. That is a totally logical reaction. And I also think that it's a totally logical reaction for somebody to turn to the White Cloaks after dealing with this woman doing this to you and to your family and destroy your business and, you know, killing your family and all this sort of stuff for the greater good. So your question is, to what extent is she that much different than Aemon Valmada? That is going to be a mind blower. And I just find it so interesting. And it's like, yeah, it's just factions and ideologies. They just believe different things, but they're willing to go to any lengths in order to do it. And again, this is the relatively good guys in this. So while it's not necessarily George R.R. Martin, you know, level of bleak ambiguity, I think that this is certainly is a turning point that lets you know, yeah, you're not in for Tolkien style fantasy. This is not Gandalf. This is definitely a different type of story, and I think that this scene really delivers it very well.
Okay, 2 more quick references, and I'm going to throw it to Jeff. First reference is it's Sarah Connor in Terminator 2. What do you do if you have a secret that's going to blow up the world, and you have to sacrifice some people along the way, like she was at first willing to kill Miles? What would you do if there is a greater good, saving 6.5, 7.5 billion lives versus this one guy? So Sarah was burdened with that choice, and it drove her crazy, which is the beauty of Terminator 2 and the TV show. Number one. Number two, what's so important about this scene is that there is so much that is yet to be revealed. And one of the things that helps you engender trust is when you know someone has spoken honestly with you from their heart. But you know who else is a master of what Steve was just talking about? Vulcans in general and Spock in particular, especially in Undiscovered Country.
I exaggerated.
Right. They kept calling each other, Spock and Valeris kept calling each other out. It was like a lie. He was like an omission. It was like a lie. He was like an error. That kind of thing. And so once again, it's that twisty pretzel thing where I'm not exactly telling the whole truth and I'm not exactly lying, but we're somewhere in the chewy center of the middle. Go ahead, Bracey. Your thoughts about Moraine just pimping the ferryman and
you and Steve both hit on something that I was going to get into. It's there are lies of commission where you verbally, willfully tell a lie to somebody, but just as powerful are lies of omission. Oh, we lost DT. Well, I'll just keep on. There are lies of omission where you withhold information. And so that plays in here.
They are masters of that.
Yeah, they're clearly masters of that. And what you might have missed there, DT, is like I was saying, there are lies of commission and lies of omission. And lies of omission are just as dangerous as lies of commission, where instead of telling a lie, you also withhold information. It's both of them are willful acts. What I find deplorable in Moraine's actions here, because from a military standpoint, from a tactical standpoint, she's not wrong. If you go back, they are going to follow us. Your family's dead anyway. You're going to die as well. You're going to put us in danger, so I'm going to do this thing. However, she didn't have to do it like that. There's a couple of things she could have done that immediately sprang to my mind. And it's kind of funny because I started watching this show with my wife, and like 15 minutes in, she's like, I don't think I like the women in this world. Because this was pretty ruthless. It was cold. It was calculated. What she could have done is, instead of manipulating the barge owner into ferrying them across, she could have handed him that money and said, get your family, get out of here. Hell is coming. You're all going to die if you don't flee. We've got enough strong young people here to pull the rope and get the barge across ourselves. That would have been well and good. You would have absolved your conscience of the welfare of these people, but instead you tricked him into leaving his family behind. When you get to the other side, she still had yet one more option if she wanted to go for it. she could have let him take the barge across because she's got the magic power. She could have burned the rope. She could have sunk the barge from across the way. We've seen the reach of her power. It's fairly significant. She could have, she could have let him get over there and let the inevitable happen. And then she could have destroyed the barge. She could have burned the rope. She could have done a number of things that would have kept the army from coming and following them across. But she didn't. Instead, she took kind of the dark path, the easier side, if you will. And he was very justified in saying, the questioners are right. The white cloaks are right. You people are worse than the monsters. And this is going to be so key because we get the very opening scene of this show with our first episode. We've seen how callously these women can kill. They are used to the sight of blood and misery, and they have this cold arithmetic about it. Whether it's for good or ill, we don't 100% know. But when you're, like you said with Sarah Connor, when you're balancing the world against a few lives, there is a necessary sort of arithmetic that reminds me of, I was in a medical support battalion. And the hardest thing to learn was about triage, deciding who you could save. And there's people that you can probably save, but you're trying to save the most. It's a numbers game. So I can't spend a whole lot of time on you if I can save these 5 guys over here. And the best I can do is just try and make you comfortable. And that was a gut-wrenching thing to learn. So I'm thinking of Moraine in this perspective, but I'm also thinking she could have done so much better. And it's like Steve said, like when Rand was talking about, like, what are men going to do at that tower? Like, we are very disposable. I've seen that with my own eyes now. And that's going to create a very interesting conflict down the road, I'm sure. So, yeah, powerful scene. Really sets the stage for a lot of things. And, like, I hated it, but I liked it because of what it's setting up. Like, personally, I hate it, but, as a plot point, I was like, okay, I'm in. Let's see where you're going to go with this.
We're going to come back to that in a minute because that was my favorite line of the episode. What are men going to do at the White Tower? That sums up the whole show for me.
Yeah.
But I do want to say this, and definitely I want to hear what you and Nims have to say. The thing about it is, if she had left him alive, he would have never stopped itching or moaning or trying to go back or fighting or vocalize his mistrust for her or anything. If he loses his family on any level and he himself survives, he's going to hold that against her until one of them dies. So I'm not trying to justify what she did. I'm saying in the aftermath of if he lost his wife, if he lost his son, if he lost anything and he's around to remember it, that's having an enemy very close to you. That's having somebody whose desire for vengeance is probably going to grow with time. So if he's traveling, you know what I'm saying? If he's traveling with them and he's still alive, all he's ever going to talk about is, I can't believe you tricked me into, leaving my house. I can't believe my wife is, I can't believe my kid is dead because of you.
Yeah, and that's why I said she had 2 other options of dealing with it, and she didn't choose either one of those. And one of them was just as cold and calculating. That latter option of just letting him go back and then dealing with the way through would have been just as ruthless, but at least you let him exercise his free will at that point. Although technically she did.
Right, technically. But I mean, is
From
that
a certain point of view?
Is that how you'd rather die? Would you rather die with the choice of defending your family against a war you can't fight? Is that a better way to die?
Yeah.
Okay. Nims, what do you think about this pivotal scene?
Yeah, I think Jeff really hit on the main tenets of what I was going to say, but I took a slightly different approach to it, or I took a something different from it as well. The military aspect is exactly where I was going to go. I spent years training so that I could look somebody in the eye and order them to go die without batting an eye. That is not an easy thing to do. Oftentimes you don't even, from a certain point of view, sometimes you won't even tell the people the truth. You'll give them the mission and you don't tell them, yeah, you're probably going to die. That's probably not a good thing to tell them, but that's what's going to happen. Same thing with, there's any number of scenarios where that happens. So I understood Moraine in that sense. I definitely agree with Jeff. Is that from a tactical sense, she was right. I can't really fault her. I agree with what he was saying about. I think there's a better way she could have done it. I think where she goes over the line, and this kind of gets into where, if she left him alive, and that darkness starts building in him, so there's a feud between the two of them. If she kills the guy for that reason, she stepped over a very thin line between of moral ambiguity. Suddenly you've gone from light gray to dark gray, and that's dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing. And then this gets back to the military thing, is that the problem I had with Moraine in this scene is that it's the same problem I would have with a military person that orders someone to die or has to execute a soldier for raping during battle or something like that. Yeah, you could do it, and you need to do it with a straight face and no emotion and be pragmatic about it and transactional about it. And I'm this way in my life now. It's just who I am now. And a lot of times my kids and my wife are like, how can you be like that? And it's like, well, that's the way I was trained. That's how I am. It's like, I do what I need to do sometimes. But
yeah. If I can join just one point, I think this is somewhere where Jordan's actual military experience went into the scene, because I think that he definitely thought Moraine's actions very tactically, and that definitely shows. I mean, the guy worked at the Citadel for many years, so he knows exactly what's going into this.
Yeah, the difference between Moraine and I think most people that are put in that situation is that Moraine has reached that point where it doesn't affect her anymore, or at least it doesn't seem to affect her. So in her lonely moments, in the back of her mind, she is not struggling with her decisions and having to come to grips with them. And when you get to that point, that is very dangerous, because that is when you are in danger of becoming a monster. And you either need to get mental health assistance, or you need to get out of that line of work because you've lost your humanity. And that is a huge thing. And that's the thing I took here, is that I didn't see Moraine anguish over this in private or in public. I wouldn't expect it in public, but in private, I didn't see her have any remorse. I didn't see her second guessing herself and analyzing her actions to make sure she had no other options. All of those things would point to, I did something very hard and difficult today, but it was something I had to do. And you're rationalizing it. And rationalizing is usually not a good thing, but in this case it is, because it shows that you understand that what you did was maybe morally gray or wrong, depending on where you want to see it, but it had to be done. When you stop doing that, you're in serious danger. You're in serious danger.
You also know, as a military man, that we're trained to do that because we can't question ourselves in the moment. When we make those decisions, we live or die by them.
Yeah. But I would say that losing your soul, I would say soul, humanity, spirit is more dangerous than everything else that goes in there, because
I suspect that Jordan is asking that very question because he's showing all the different sides of it.
Yes. Well, that's a famous saying of Jesus. What would it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? And that, again, that moral dilemma is the question we always try to answer, both in real life and as we write these things. Because going back to the Sarah Connor frame, I have to imagine that in Moraine's mind, she's looking at all the memories and looking at all the other scenes and look at everything that can happen between whichever way the dragon goes and whatever the dark one is going to do. We're going to talk about that right next, and trying to weigh that against this one guy. And so, but I still agree with what you're saying, Nemesis, that once you get to the point where it doesn't bother you and everything's just a matter of efficiency, you have disconnected from your conscience because you have to be able to be that way. And like Jeff was saying before, better to let me die defending my family than to lure me to a death that you didn't warn me about. And now I'm going down with the barge, because if you put me back there, at least I could have, again, died defending my family. If I got to go, let that be my choice and let it be for that reason. So, yeah. So, which leads me to the next scene, next concept. I have to say, however, I'm not sold on Rand and Egwene. I'm not sold on them as a couple. I'm not sold as whether or not they have any chemistry. And I don't quite, it's still, but this is just the second episode, and I haven't read the books, but it still feels very much like we're supposed to accept their love because the story says so. But you subconsciously, you can always tell when something is not quite right, because when you truly love someone, there's some type of deeper reason. And I can't see that yet between these two. These two feel like, we're young and we're this and we're that. So we're going to hook up and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't feel any deeper than that to me. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's where I'm perceiving it. So I'm not sold on them. So there are arguments about celibacy and becoming the wisdom and becoming a novice under Moran's training and all that. Doesn't have a lot of emotional weight to me. So I'll hear you guys' thoughts about that. But what is a trip is the dream. And once again, we went to the horror gore level. I was like, wait just a second. because Randall Thor, which is a cool name. Randall Thor, if you're going to have a name, be named after Thor. But anyway, so he's sitting up there. And another thing, and we're going to see some more of this later, is there's this thing that the episode and the story world does to where you're not sure if people are awake or dreaming.
Yeah.
It's the most amazing thing. And it does it so well because they shift from the dream world to the real world so seamlessly until you're like, wait. Was that real? What part was real? So Randall's, basically coughing and he's choking and he coughs up a dead bat. And I'm like, wait just a minute. You wouldn't have any Wayne ancestry. You don't know about it, from Gotham and all that. So I'm like, holy cow. Because what do you do after that happens? You go tell somebody, just for future reference, maybe I coughed up a dead bat while I was sleeping. They find out that everybody was going through that, and then they get a glimpse of the Dark One. And, once again, to me, it again resonates, this idea. Because if we're dealing with just Christian imagery, normally the Dark One is a reference to Satan, and a savior or a messianic figure would be a reference to Christ. But here, the dragon, which is the name for the devil in the Bible, is a character that can flip either way. And the Dark One, I guess, is more evil or pure evil, whatever. But one thing that we know from this scene is that he's on to you. Okay, whatever you think about him and whatever he is or isn't, he's on to you. And now they have to argue about, why do we have that dream? Was that the Dark One in our heads? Is that a prophetic dream? Is that Moraine messing with her? And that smacked to me of Jean Grey vibes, Professor X vibes, Emma Frost vibes. You got powers we don't know about. And how do I know you're not manipulating me to dance to your tune by giving me this horrific dream? So again, I love everything about that scene and all the questions that it raises, and introducing a glimpse of the Dark One, and them really starting to say, what are we doing here? And then also my favorite line, like I said before, what is the man going to do at the White Tower? That to me sums up the whole show so far. That's like the definitive moment where I'm like, that's it right there. You said it. So let me hear your thoughts about the dark bad dream and Rand and Gwen and the glimpse of the Dark One and all that. Start with Steve.
Yeah, I had the same issues with you regarding Rand and Gwen, and I think a lot of it is these actors. I don't know what it is. These two have no chemistry to speak of as actors, and I think that's coming across. It's a little better in the books, but I can definitely understand where at this point you would be looking at this and saying, yeah, these two are just together because they were just like, that was what was available in the village, growing up. And, it's like, yeah, they're of age and they're just going to get together because they're kids. I have to agree that doesn't work. But beyond that, I will say that the dream sequence was really, really vivid. It was really, really well done. It looked visual. They definitely took a lot of the, the really creepy horror tones, especially with Rand throwing up the bat. I was actually playing a video game recently that was a horror game called House of Ashes, and they did something similar to that. And it kind of had those vibes to me. So yeah, you went full horror with this. Nicely done. It's one of those scenes that you kind of have to skip a little bit if you're not really a fan of that. But yeah, as far as the other stuff though, with the Aes Sedai, with the whole influence of the Dark One, we do know that the one power can affect spirit and can affect through dreams. So it could very well be that the Dark One is trying to find them, using these sort of dream abilities, whatever it is that he's doing. But it could just as easily be Moiraine, for all we know. Now, the question then you have to ask is, why would she use these horrible nightmares to try to motivate people? I don't know. But yeah, I do like that it's raised as a possibility. Beyond that, I would say that, again, this comes back to the breaking of the fellowship. This is kind of where we start to see the relationship start to crack, because we're starting to see that the women of the group are kind of going along with Moiraine because they're seeing, yeah, I could maybe benefit from being an Aes Sedai. Whereas the men are saying, okay, you take me to the White Tower, and if I'm the Dragon Reborn, I am probably not in for a good time. Because I'm clearly being set up. I can understand where Rand would have that fear, where that would come from, especially after we've seen how ruthless Moiraine can be in pursuit of her goals. So Rand and Matt, I think, have an understandable caution. And Egwene tries to chew Rand out for this and saying, oh, well, you're just being stubborn and all these things. But no, I think he actually has a valid viewpoint here, because we don't know what they're going to do. You know, we don't know what Moraine's real agenda is. We don't know what the Aes Sedai's real agenda is. Even if she has something that she can promise, we can't promise that the Merlin seed is going to go along with it. I mean, they could try to gentle him, take away his power, or worse, kill him. We don't know. So I think it's perfectly a rational reason for these two to have different viewpoints, but it shows the fracturing of the alliances. Because now they're starting to bicker a little bit among themselves, and that's when it starts leading, into the full break later in the episode.
Okay, we're going to talk in future episodes about the obvious analog to castration called gemling, because I got a lot to say about that, but we'll save that for the future. But before I throw it to Nims, I want to throw this out at you. I can't stand Matt. Now, just like I told you I couldn't stand Girardi because I knew when I saw her, she wasn't no good. I'm calling it now. I can't stand Matt. I don't want to see. One of the reasons it irritates me so is because I don't have friends like that. I don't hang around with people like that, because Matt is jealous, and Matt will do anything he could to get with your girlfriend, and Matt will sell you out to get more attention for himself. He's that dude. Okay, I don't have friends like that. I don't hang around with people like that, and I don't understand guys who do. I don't understand why you can't see it. That this dude is Judas. This dude is Cain. This dude is just waiting on his chance to outshine you, to show you up, to do whatever, and he's gonna try to take everything you got. I can't stand Matt, just like I couldn't stand Girardi. I'm calling it now. Second episode, I can't stand it. Okay, just want to throw that out there. Okay, Nims, go ahead.
I think the other problem, and just real quick, the other problem I have with Matt is, at the end of the episode, Matt is stupid. So, Matt does exactly what he was told not to do, and it's like, if you got to err, when you're dealing with magical stuff that you don't know anything about, when the magical person tells you something, you should probably listen.
You should probably listen.
Yeah.
Did you touch it?
Yeah. Were you poking it?
Still one of the best jokes.
Yeah. This scene here. First of all, let me get to Rand and Egwene. I agree with you guys. I don't see anything here. Honestly, I think Rand is much more in love with Egwene than she is with him. I think she was like the idea of being in a relationship, but obviously, to put it in modern parlance, she's more focused on her career right now than she is in a relationship, so, that's what she's about. Rand's problem here is that Rand thinks that he is going to convert her, or convince her to give up her path for him. And it's like, dude, just give it up. It's not going to happen, bro. Just move on. And, we've all seen this in our life. Some guy who's pining over somebody, or a girl that's pining over a guy. And it's like, no, it's just not going to work. It's like,
he's just not that into you.
Yeah. So that's what I see there. As far as the dream, yeah, it was creepy and everything. The problem I had with it was, I really liked the vision of the Dark Lord with the eyes and everything. I mean, that was just like grabs you, The other part was, I kind of like this idea that if you're going to do scary stuff like that, it needs to, I didn't get the symbolism. and what is this dream supposed to be telling these people and accomplish? How is this dream? The Dark One is obviously, if we accept that the Dark One is seeing this dream, what is the Dark One trying to accomplish here? How is he trying to win the dragon over to his side with this dream? And there's two ways to do that. You can either scare someone into doing what you want them to do, or you seduce them into doing what you want them to do. That's, those are the two main ways the evil works, oftentimes, especially in writing and everything. So it's like, how was this either frightening enough to convince the dragon to come over to my side, or seductive enough? I didn't see either one of those. So I didn't really understand what was going on from a visual perspective, from a gore perspective, from a, oh my God, the dude just spit up a bat perspective. Great stuff, storytelling, but from a story perspective, I wasn't sure what exactly was going on here. So.
Okay, both of you said that, and I have to kind of give you my perspective on that, because it felt kind of clear to me that it was don't leave move. It was a stakes move. It was this is how deep of a hole you're in. This is how deep, the doo-doo goes. So Don't think if you run off, or don't think if you try to hurt Moraine to take her out, that you're off the hook. So if she's behind it, that felt kind of clear to me. Like, it's like, okay, it's like a situation like with your kids. Let's say they're driving for the first time. They don't understand what it's like to be behind a motorized vehicle. And, they're just thinking about the fun part. You have to learn the responsibility part. And as a parent, you don't want them to have to learn the hard way that, car is not a toy. And so that's what that felt like to me. That this is not a game. These are not toys. And even if you think you can run off, if you think you can do better on your own, if you want to leave the group, if you don't want to go to the White Tower, if you want to hurt Moraine, if you're thinking about any of that, this is the level of crap you're in, is what it felt like to me.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bracey.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense that Moraine's behind the dreams because it felt like everybody else had different dreams. Similar but different, even though they didn't go into great detail. We get to see what Rand's going through. We get to see him cough up the bat and everything, which was horrifyingly gross. I applaud that as a big horror aficionado. I also like the presence of the eyes versus his servant, which is all mouth, the eyeless, which obviously a little Tolkien pulling in there. You got your Eye of Sauron, and then who comes out and meets you at the Black Gates? The mouth of Sauron. So I kind of appreciate the mouth coming before the eyes, but it's the eyes are seeing you. I'm kind of like Nemesis. I was kind of worried about the choice of symbolism. Culturally, bats, I was trying to figure out where that would, come in. At first I thought like it was a rat, because I couldn't see the wings in the dark, and then later on saying, "Oh, it's bats everywhere," or rats are bringers of plagues. That would have made sense to me. I suppose you could say that about bats with rabies, but really we think about rats in that case. Or I thought perhaps it would have been a raven, a classic symbol of death. So the bat was an interesting choice, but I don't quite understand what they were going for there, unless it's again just that scalloped wing allegory for Lucifer in its own way. But the scene was still effective, even if I didn't quite get it. And like Nemesis was saying, if it's a motivational thing, if it's to show you that you can't run away, I'm always going to be here. Now that I'm aware of you, I'm always going to be here with you. So no matter what you do, if it is Moraine, that's a good point to make. That keeps them on her side and traveling with her, given their misgivings. Because we know that the dragon's not going to have a good day. And two, anybody who's left over is going to be kicked to the curb. Like, hey, we're sealing up the White Tower. Good luck, everybody. Go back home across miles of dangerous countryside with horrible things coming this way. Good luck on that. So I was thinking a better representation of a dream, a nightmare that affected a person and altered the course of their behavior was in Avengers, when we see the Scarlet Witch mojo Tony Stark's mind, and we see all the Avengers have fallen, the broken Captain America shield, because he's got PTSD, after seeing this gigantic space armada from the Battle of New York. And this leads him to creating Ultron. So, you can see how this all like kind of funnels into Tony Stark's entire arc over the course of the MCU. Not quite getting that here. Now, as for Rand and how do you say her name again? Egwene. Here's the issue I have with them. I've been that guy. I was the guy who like fell in love with my neighbor and pined after her, and like we were great friends and everything, but like nothing was ever going to come over it. So I get that. I can identify with that. And we get told that it's exposition. You used to carry flowers, and carry it to her as a little girl. We don't see it. And it's not just the actors don't have chemistry. The story has made the mistake, or perhaps it's purposeful. But I can't buy the relationship because of the way they set things up. We set up how much he likes her, but we see that she's very involved in the circle of women and everything that's to come. And our first interaction with them in the previous episode is she is standoffish until they are finally alone, until there's nobody else around. It's a quiet moment. It almost like he's a secret, even though everybody knows how much he's into her. And so that set up, as far as characters, a sort of antipathy between them. It's set up a buffer, and that's always in my mind now.
I'll add real quick. Not only she waits till they're alone, they hook up when they're alone. So it's like it doesn't paint her in a good light,
He feels like a side piece,
Yeah.
Like even though everybody knows about it and all this stuff that's going on, so it's there's no intimacy in public as you would expect with a couple who's truly in love. And he's such a good guy, Greg, that even as soon as she tells him like, Naive was telling me I could be the wise woman, and he knows. He tries to convince her otherwise, but he goes off to be alone, and he is such that white knight good guy that when she comes and tries to confess, I've decided, and he goes, I know, and he still puts the arm around her and he leans in, and he would have gone on with his life, she would have gone on with hers, but things have changed, and now they're in a high stress situation. And when you get in these situations, as once again, military man, my boy Nemesis will know, that starts to bring out a lot of truth or a lot of things that are lying below the surface. It bubbles up, and then you've got to deal with it. And when you're dealing with life and death, and he sees her go off to talk to a, Mother Superior over there. So what did she offer you? What's going to become of the rest of us? Like you were all ready to tell me to go shove off anyway. So what does it matter? And at first I took him as being a little petulant because that's the way the scene tried to play out. It tried to not make you like his decisions. Even his boy Matt's like, oh man, come on, grow up, man. Like there's monsters chasing us. This is the safest place to be, which is again a perfect rationale. But he's not wrong. Rand's not wrong to feel this way, even if he comes across very petulantly, which was probably his direction at the time. But he's totally not wrong to feel this way. And for her to like just try and cozy up to him was like, no, like couldn't you see I slept out here alone by purpose? And again, that's when she comes to him, when he is alone, when he is separated. And so I do not like the relationship, and I can't like the relationship, and I can't believe in the relationship because of everything they've set up. They've told me visually, and they've told me in the story that I can't believe in this. So, whether the actors had chemistry or not to begin with, there's nothing there. A much better relationship is if you watch the television series they did, The Legend of the Seeker. That's a relationship I bought into much more between Richard and I forget the name of the lady in it.
The perfect song for their relationship is Self-Esteem by Offspring. So
there you go.
Okay. Well, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're going to walk in that kind of beta energy, you're going to have to accept that you are a blanket. You are something I grab to comfort me when I need it, and I'll throw back away when I'm done with it. That's exactly who you are. So if you're going to accept that position, you got to accept everything that come along with that. Okay. And so if you're going to be a blanket, then go ahead on and be a blanket, but you can't get mad. You can't get mad when they throw you away because that's all you are to them. So self-esteem is the right thing. If that's all I am to you, then let me go find somebody who I'm a little bit more than that. Maybe they'll be worthy of my emotional investment because clearly that's not how you feel about me. Okay. But so that leads me to the next thing where we actually get to Shadar Lagoth, but there's so many cool revelations along the way. First revelation is that both Moraine and Perrin are hurt, more hurt than what they let on. So they got wounds that they're nursing. And if you're a Moraine, that's significant. We also find out they can't self-heal. That's a very important part of the mythology and the lore because that changes everything. If they have to stay close to each other so that one can heal the other because they can't use the one power to heal themselves. With parents kind of thing, it's kind of telegraphed to me. I mean, I kind of knew what that was from the jump, but I'm like, okay, we'll see how this is going to play out, but I kind of know where this is going. What's fascinating to me as they come into the crack in the shield or the wall or whatever, is on the way she's telling the story of how Shadar Lagoth, which means Shadows Waiting, the title episode, how it came to be what it is. And long story short, it was the one city that didn't help them again in the Trolloc War. And so it got consumed by evil. So, and if the Trollocs themselves won't come in, then that's a kind of a red flag. It's a big old siren, like, really? The Trollocs ain't coming up in here? And so what I find fascinating is, Steve, you can let me know, because I wanted to see that. The Trollocs War and the part where I wanted to see that. Do we see that in the books?
I don't think that we see it at that point. It might have been referred to in one of the prequel novels that was done later, but I can't be sure. Okay, but I don't remember anything about that. I would like to see that too, but because a lot of what happened back in the day with the Trolloc Wars and the breaking of the world, all of that stuff is alluded to and gradually built up. But I don't think that we actually see it except like in some flashback prologues that I've read, things like that. But yeah, I don't remember.
Because I definitely would have liked to seen that. And so anyway, but that's what establishes the backstory for the city itself, which is why it's abandoned. And one of the things I thought we were going to get to see is those statues come to life. That's what I would have done if I wrote it. Some of them statues would have been moving. Would have been like, whoa, like he walked past and it turns his head, like, whoa, like that kind of thing. That's what I thought was going to happen. That's what I would have done, but that's just me. So as we enter into this citadel with this backstory and this back history and all that, and the Trollocs themselves won't come there, once again, you get the strong sense that Moraine ain't telling you everything. She's telling you what she wants you to know. Because what's going on in the city? What's happening in that place of desolation? But here's the thing that got on my nerves. Y'all already know what I'm going to say. Each one of the three of you could say what I'm finna say, because you know what I'm finna say, and here it comes. They did the Scooby-Doo thing of, let's go exploring.
Yes.
Let's go walking through the dark city where Trollocs fear to tread. What's that door? What's that thing? I was like, really? Really, y'all, really? So that was another thing when I was just like, oh. So I might cut it some slack because Moraine is hurting more than she let on. And using the one power depletes her, and she can't power up because she needs like a Green Lantern battery to power back up. So maybe I'll cut her some slack from that. But I was like, come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Really? Really? So give me your thoughts about the backstory of the Dark City and them just wandering through it. And, you know, do you feel like that's justified story-wise? Because I just felt like, why? Why would you come into a place after learning its history and it's consumed by evil with no living thing left behind? Only the walls are left standing. I'm like, how fast are we getting up out of this mud? Because I got some baked beans on the stove, and so I need I'm not going walking through that. But that's just me. Start with Nems.
Well, first of all, let me hit on Perrin real quick. I want to like this character a lot. Having watched all 4 episodes, he gets better. He has such a gentle strength about him, and right now he seems to be hiding behind, in the back. He's behind everybody else and letting everybody else go. I'm like, come on, man, step forward and be that gentle tower of strength I know you are, because I really want to like this character and who he is. And right now I think he's taking a back seat. So I'm hoping that's going to happen over the course of this season. And I don't know what happened to him in the books and stuff like that, but that's what I really hope for him, because he seems like a character I could really root for, so I'm waiting for that. In this city, it's just, first of all, the whole idea really reminds me, this is where I really got Tolkien in this book, because it reminds me of the Paths of the Dead, and the oath breakers, and then what happens to those who break oaths. So I got all of that from this, and but the effect of the creeping evil was really disturbing. This is the part of this episode that really disturbed me. And when it's going after the horses, I was like, would somebody save the damn horses? Let the horses go, man. Let those horses run. And that horse got eaten up. I was like, oh no, come on. It's like, eat Matt. Eat somebody.
Every D&D party always lets their horses get munched by something.
Yeah. I was like, that poor horse. What'd that horse do? Is that horse been carrying you all this time and all this, and it just got snacked on? So I didn't. But I mean, when they split up, yeah, you're right. I was waiting for the music. It was like doot, 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 doot. It's like, I was waiting for that to go on. And and the part that really surprised me is that, okay, yeah, Moraine is out for the count, but the Lamb should have been like, excuse me, can we all circle around in here and keep it tight? Because this is not a good idea. So they go out there, and of course, we had the interaction between the two, non-lovebirds, but it was the thing with Matt. You saw it coming from a mile away. The guy, the worst thing he is, what his problem is, and what so annoys all of us, is he is that kid that the minute you tell him not to touch something, he goes and grabs it and starts licking it. Not only is he not to touch it, he's licking it. You're like, dude, what are you doing? I told you it's poisonous. Yeah, but you told me not to do it. It's like, okay, then, you get what you get. So yeah, it is really annoying, and we've all run into those kids, when we were kids, or those kids when we were adults, and if you're teaching, it's the same thing where you're trying to give them good advice. You're trying to, and it's just like, I have to be contrarian about everything. And you're like, at some point, you get to the point where you just throw up your hands, like, good, go lick it, eat it, eat that thing, eat the whole thing, here, I'll give you a fork, chew on it, so yeah, it's just, that's what's so annoying about him. And but yeah, this scene was really good. The tension ratcheted up, the effects were really well done. This was one of the best suspense scenes of this series so far, and I enjoyed it,
especially when we have evil moving quite like a body of water, quite like something that's closing in on you, quite like something you could not possibly not be touched by. But anyway, go ahead, Bracey. What do you think about all of this, all these Dark City shenanigans?
Yeah, I'm totally with Nemesis. As soon as they started getting into the history of this, I went right to Tolkien. This is the Oathbreakers all over them. This is the City of the Dead. And it shows you that this sort of demonstrates here and in Tolkien that you can't be a fence sitter, which is kind of an interesting theme when you get into like the village. Like, you guys can't pretend, you can't hide away in your sleepy little village anymore. Because of military experience, and I think a lot of these people, like Tolkien, obviously drew from like World War II, what was going on there, just as like the Narnia books drew from it. You can't be a fence sitter when you are faced with ultimate evil. You've got to make a choice, and so this city, trying to be Sweden, like the Oathbreakers in Lord of the Rings, paid for it. Eventually you are going to be consumed. There's no time out. There's no safe space. You've got to pick a side. And, if you can, pick the right side. So that aspect was kind of interesting to me. I would like to know a little bit more, but I don't have to. I totally get where they're going with this. And it's not something I haven't seen before. The scene did annoy me because I know Land's all upset. He's dealing with Moraine, and we get the idea that he and Moraine are more than just companions. We get the idea that they're lovers, even if it's not like a loving relationship. They are probably physically and chemically bonded in the way of camaraderie of that sort.
Yeah, they're intimates, whatever that might look like.
Yeah, precisely. So there's that there, and I didn't like that this guy lost his focus, because as soon as anybody started to walk out of that room, I'd have been up there with a sword, like, get your butt back here. Are you crazy? I just told you not to go touch anything, and you're going to go wander around the city of death? You're like getting your mitts and whatever? No. Get your dumb butts back here, or I'm going to take this sword. I'm going to hamstring you. All right? Sit down. Shut up. We're going to wait for Moraine to wake up. Then we're going to move out of the city. We're going to get to the other side here. Like, no, he doesn't do anything. So I felt like, DT, you were talking about like convenience. That was convenient. That was so plot convenient that I was like, all right, you guys are going to get it, and it's going to be your fault. I can see it coming a mile away. And sure enough, and it did have to be the predictable one, of course. It had to be Matt who went into it. Matt who finds the dagger. Also, an interesting thing, a dagger. A knife is a tool. A dagger is an assassin's weapon. It is the knife in your back. It is the knife in the dark. And I feel like there's some purposeful symbology in that. And my wife asked me after watching the second episode, it's like, who do you think the dragon is? And I said, like, they're leaning very heavily toward it being Rand or Egwene. It's very, that's the classic setup. I mean, the guy's last name is Thor, for goodness sakes, and and she's got all the magic power, so we got that going on. So it's very much either one of them. But I said, like, what I would kind of like to see, and what would be more interesting, and I haven't read the book, so I don't know, is one, if it's Matt, because he has that moral ambiguity. He's the guy who can be turned. He's a good guy at heart. We've seen that, but he also leans to the other side. We've seen him do things that are not right, to just questionable. So it's he's in those shades of gray. He's he's like that the second brother in Narnia. It was like, like, I'll take the Turkish delights, and the sin just kind of piles up until you're trapped in his web. But I also thought an interesting thing to do. What's the big guy's name? The guy who killed his wife?
Perrin.
Yeah, Perrin, I said, would also be a very interesting choice, because he is living with guilt, a horrible, dark guilt that nobody knows what his crime is, even if it was the heat of battle, that he can't express. He hasn't expressed it to anyone. And there's a darkness that can be exploited. And when they were talking about the dreams, he spoke up and said, yeah, I saw the guy too. He mentioned that. And so I was like, there's a hook there. When you're living with such a terrible event like that, and guilt's a good way to twist a character into going from a very good person into becoming a very bad person. Such and such happened because of this, and you did that, and you can go like, oh, you weren't strong enough either physically or morally to deal with the situation, but I can give you that. I can offer you that. So I think that would be also an interesting way to go. Because I don't know who the dragon is yet. Like I said, I haven't read the books. I haven't watched the other 2 episodes. And so I'm kind of curious as to what this darkness in the city can do. I mean, like, we see it come flooding out like a tidal wave, or as I was calling it like the necromold. And that kind of evil is always scary, because it's the, not being able to touch something is like the ultimate thing. And it's the rising. Yeah, it's the blob. It's it's the rising tide of acid. It's all sorts of things. The floor is lava. You can't touch it, and it's that's the most tenuous of situations, because, like, a monster you can fight or elude, But something like this just eats up all your space, and there's no going back once it's claimed a territory. So I did appreciate that level of tension. And when Moraine finally wakes up and she like looks at Lan, it's like, "You've killed us all." I was like, "You're damn right you did, because you didn't keep the Scooby Gang in check." So now we got to wait and see what's going to happen and how are they going to make it through. We know they're going to make it through, but how? And because you've established how deadly this world is, maybe they're not all going to make it through, because only one of them can be the dragon.
That's right. That's right. Now, if I was writing this, and then I'm going to throw it to Steve, if I was writing this, I would definitely make the dragon Perrin, because he has the best motivation to go either way. Either he can be so hurt and so dark to saying, to me, it's the Harvey Dent in Dark Knight. It's a two-faced argument. There's no fairness in this world. There's no fairness in life. And if you suffer a loss, unspeakable loss, and if somehow it's partly your fault or directly your fault, how do you come back from that? How do you balance those scales? That kind of thing. So I can see him, if he ever manifests, saying this world doesn't deserve to go on because of that lack of fairness, or I'm going to get past my grief and I'm going to save this world so what happened to others doesn't happen to me. That's the way I would do it. I would buy it from him based on his backstory, but that's just me. Who knows how it's going to go? Okay, Steve, thoughts on the Dark City and the Scooby Gang's exploration thereof?
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the Dragon Reborn or who it is, because I know who Jordan intended it to be, and because of that, I'm just going to let you guys speculate. But I do find your theories interesting. I will say that, and I think that Nem, you have a very good grasp of who I think Perrin was intended to be. So I would agree with that stuff. As far as Shadar Logoth, I think that you guys hit it with the Oathbreaker stuff, but I would also add the Mines of Moria, because it's clear that they were trying to aim the setup for something similar, which is, okay, it's too dangerous to go this way. It's too dangerous to go this way. So we're going to take this perilous route through this place we should not go in order to get out. So that the only reason that they went into Shadar Logoth is because Lan knew that that's where the Trollocs would not follow them. Okay, so that I'm like, okay, I buy that logic. The problem is once they get there, it's like, why are you letting them go off? And not only are these people out there touching things and exploring things, they also split up. I hate that. Do not split the party. Never split the party. Anybody who's been in a D&D session for 5 minutes knows not to split the party. And what do? They split the party. No. Don't do that. And we find out that, what ends up happening, Matt goes off by himself, and he's the one who unleashes the ancient evil of the city. Nice job. You would think that one of the more sensible people, even if Lan couldn't do it himself, you would think that one of the more sensible members of the group, like a Rand or an Egwene, would have said, "Yeah, I'm going to follow Matt and make sure he doesn't get into trouble." Something like that would have been reasonable. But no. It's everybody goes off in their own directions, and they're concerned about their own little things and touch. No. I'm like, yeah, you've got to unleash the ancient evil, because otherwise you have no plot. But there are ways to do it in a way and that are not this ridiculous. So yeah, the execution really did not work here. I did love the lore. I love the look of the city. I love the look of the ancient evil when it hits. It is creepy and scary. It's just one of those things where I can see where Jordan was coming from, trying to do this scene. I can see where the people who wrote the episode and wrote the show were trying to do, but the execution just did not work. So yeah, I'm with you guys on that. But there are definite points where I was really kind of into it. Perrin, I kind of have an idea where they're going with him, but that's another one on which I'm going to hold off, because that's kind of interesting stuff when you get there.
Okay. I will say to both Nemesis and Bracey, I think you're projecting more of a military commander mindset onto Lan, and I think he's more just about her. And I think maybe he's so consumed with her, because what you guys said would be someone that would be in charge in a military sense, like this makes the most sense, but he's got his focus so hard on her until, maybe that precludes him from thinking that way. Just throwing that out.
That's a great
I would say
point.
he's more like a classic ranger rather than somebody who is like used to working in a military operation.
You also get this. You get the sense that there's something more bonding him and to her than emotion. No more emotion, no more human attachment or something. Like there's something else that forces him to be involved with her.
It's a constant mind meld, is what they've got.
Yeah, because I was thinking along the same lines. If men are not a part of the White Tower, and yet these high-ranking ladies have guardians, well, you have to ensure their trustworthiness in some ways. So I was thinking there might be some sort of magical bonding there as well.
Yeah, it's ironic in a world that keeps saying that men are the problem that the Aes Sedai all need a man to protect them, but I'll deal with that later. Finally, what we're going to...
And boom, DT steps on the landmine.
So, what we bring to the table, I always bring the chicken scratch detector. You can't make me buy the story. And there's too much stupid in my face. I'm sorry. I don't care how pretty the explosion is. If it's stupid, I'm going to call it stupid. So, men are the problem.
I didn't do it. It's DT.
men are the problem. And the arrogance. It's in the intro, the arrogance of thinking that you can handle the power that's meant for women. But I notice every one of y'all, except the Reds, got a man protecting you everywhere you go. Imagine that. But anyway, so we're going to look at the last thing. So they all split up. Now, to me, honestly, that was a trope that I kind of hoped wasn't coming. Yeah. But the more I look at it, I'm like, if we're going to extend the story, we can't just get to who the dragon is, and we can't just stumble on the White Tower. We got to have something. So I guess we have to split them up. If I had written the Ancient Evil Awakening, it would have been what I told you before, with their very presence activating the statues. It would have been something living being in there that made the statues come alive, and that would have represented the evil.
Or even something like dissonant whispers, something to draw their attention away, something to lead them out of that safe haven that they had. But not just them being stupid. I can't stand it when characters are just dumb.
That's right. So we get the split up trope. So Rand and Matt slip through the wall. Perrin and Egwene climb up to the wall and jump off. Now I was like, now wait just a second. How you know you're going to survive that fall? And I thought there should have been some more damage from that. And Egwene was like, are you ready? And Perrin was like, ready or not. It's either that or the black blob. And I was like, I don't know. Y'all look kind of high up to just kind of jump in the water, and that was the end of it. Should have been a broken bone or something. But anyway.
I will say you may know someone who jumped off a 120-foot crane into the ocean and was just fine. But I don't know. You might know someone who did that.
You got a Wolverine level healing factor. We've established that. You're not like regular people, so that don't count. And so then Lana Moraine escape on horseback, and then we get Nynaeve. Am I saying it right?
Nynaeve, yeah.
Nynaeve. Okay, so then she shows up. The wisdom from the village from the fight last time that we thought was dead, and she shows up. Now she's another character to me where her everything is telegraphed. So as soon as I saw her, I was like, yeah, okay, I see where this is going. But that's the way the episode ends, and so sets up some other stuff and blah, blah, blah. And again, Nynaeve is a trope. She's a caricature. She's, I'm not about that. I just want to see my people. I'm not about that. I just, okay.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Go ahead.
When Nynaeve showed up, was I the only one was like, I thought you were dead?
I knew she was alive, but I wish she were dead. The thing that bothered me about the scene was the stupid, I'm going to put the dagger to the guy's foot. Oh, come on. Lan would have seen that a million miles away. Come on. Yeah. He's a trained warder. Come on.
Yeah. But I was just like, when she showed up and did all that, I was just like,
So that's how the episode ends, and we're set up for all the shenanigans that happens when the group splits up. But from a writing point of view, that's an opportunity to get a deeper dive into the character and their values and how they react to stress, and a little bit more about the backstory. So again, the more I thought about it from a narrative point of view, I'm like, okay, well, this is setting us up for a little bit of one-on-one time or a couple time with the different couples. And again, we can expand what they're about. And I'm like, maybe this will help me care, help us care, So we'll see how that plays out. All in all, I thought it was a fantastic episode. The only time it drags is when we're dealing with the Ron Egwene relationship. Other than that, things are popping off, things are happening, significant things are happening. You're learning stuff that obviously is going to make a difference from the introduction of the questioners all the way through the episode. So I really liked it. And, skipping past, like we said, the Scooby-Doo exploration, dumb stuff, we kind of know you can't go into a city of ancient evil and the evil stay asleep or else you got no story, like Steve said. So, but I really liked it. I'm really enjoying the story world. I'm really, really wanting to see what happens next, where this thing goes, how these different strands or threads play out. So I said on Twitter, I was like, all right, story, you've got me hooked. Now don't disappoint me. So what I'm really hoping is that all these seeds, these things, I hope this is not a writing team that sets all this stuff up and then forgets about it by season's end. I hope it's not that. We haven't seen all the episodes and a new one drops every Friday, so we're playing catch up here. But I'm hoping it doesn't have that kind of feel to where we have all these questions that we want answered, but we never, even if it's tune in next season, I'll take that, other than ignoring all these threads that are being set up in these first two episodes, because I want to see how this stuff plays out. And when you have something as large as a war as a backstory, that means you can bring in just about anything. People that survived the war, places that survived the war that were changed by it, which is what the Dark City is. I mean, just there's so much material here. Not having read the books, there's so much narrative material here until I hope that they close out these threads in a satisfying way. All right, guys, let me hear your final thoughts. Start with Nims.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to leave on is that next episode, I really want to talk about the pairings of the 2 and 2 and how those personalities mesh. The Matt and Rand pairing I thought was okay. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with the Egwene and Perrin, because here you have I'm going to call her a user because it's kind of what she is right now, and the guy who is very quiet and not sticking up for himself right now and racked by guilt. And I don't think that's a really great combination. So I'm curious what's going to happen there. So
Go ahead, Bracey. Final thoughts?
Nynaeve coming in. I didn't expect her to be dead, mostly because I saw a promo shot and she was featured in the promo shot as part of the cast. I was like, okay, she's not going to be dead. She's mysteriously dragged off. We don't see her. So that sets up a few things, even if she's proving to be a bit tropey. It's like, okay, how'd she survive? And because of things that were set up in the previous episode, I'm wondering, she's got an undercurrent of anger, a lot of anger. Her initial reaction to one of the Aes Sedai is hostility. She grabs her knife. She's willing to get in the face of this sorceress despite knowing what kind of power she can wield. And I guess she's talked to the wind to track them down. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of explanation on that. I'm willing to buy into that just because she does have some magic. And if she can sneak up on land, what else does that say about her? So now I start to wonder, what's her part in this? Is she not as Gandalf-y as we thought? She's not Obi-Wan. What if she's more Darth Sidious, Darth Maul, that sort of thing? What if she's really been on the dark side the whole time? She's holding a grudge. Here's somebody else who can be a servitor of the Dark One coming up. So they've actually rekindled my interest in this character and what her part to play in the whole situation might be. Another interesting turn, like perhaps Matt or Perrin being, the dragon in the end. Like Nemesis, I do want to see more from Perrin because he is that strong but silent type, and given everything that he's dealing with, I would like to see the character flourish. But I'm also willing to see him go down a darker path because that would be very interesting. I will say, like, as far as like the jump off the wall there was a famous. I think it was the Golden Gate Bridge, because people would jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, commit suicide, and some famous diver at the time was like, "Oh, I'll prove that you can safely jump off," and he died.
Oh, jeez.
Nemesis, yeah, you're one in a million there, buddy. But that's such a trope thing. Like, you can fall off the Empire State Building into water in cinema, and you are fine. So I didn't even bat an eye at that sort of thing. But it's like DT said, they've got enough elements in play and enough interesting elements, even if a lot of the characters have not really sold themselves to me yet. But the overall story, the overall world, and the situation is more than enough to keep me coming back. So I'm in.
That's right. Kudos to the writers for that. Go ahead, Steve. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I would say that so far it's getting better. The first 100 pages of the book really were the worst, but now we're starting to see things happen. We're starting to see the areas outside of the two rivers. We're starting to see what the society is like. We're starting to see what the world is like. We're starting to see a sense of the larger conflict, the larger threats, all these sorts of things. And we're starting to see how dangerous the world really is and how much trouble the characters are in. And I think some of the pairings that they're going off in are really quite interesting. Perrin, I would say, is another one that really does interest me. He has this Peter Rasputin quality about him, where he is this gentle giant type of character. And I like seeing that and getting him away from the stronger personalities in the group, like Moraine and Lan and Rand. I think should allow him to flourish a little bit more. And I have to say, the stuff going on with him, which I'm not ready to talk about yet, gets really interesting. And I can't wait to talk about some of those elements going forward. I do not miss Nynaeve. I wish she had not come back, but I knew she had to. She's like Matt for me. I can't stand her. I didn't even like her in the books. She's just irritating. She annoys the heck out of me. I don't like her. So seeing her, but I guess, there had to be somebody for Lan to kind of interact with, since Moraine is kind of out of commission for the next episode. So it's like, okay, I guess we have to at least get some conflict out of it. So yeah, okay, that's fine. And Rand and Matt, I think, kind of become a little bit of a twisted version of like Frodo and Sam, except that Matt is nowhere near as loyal as Sam is. So I just love all these little twisty Tolkien things. Now that I'm actually kind of watching through this for the first time in years. So it's like, it's really kind of nice to see some of this stuff. And I will say that the character that shows up and meets Rand in next episode, I really liked him. But we'll get into that next week, hopefully.
I love the Peter Rasputin comparison. I hope Perrin does not become Worf. Just the big guy punching bag that's taken as a joke. But I love that Peter Rasputin heart thing. That's great. All right, y'all. That's it for this episode. As you can see, we're all intrigued. We're all in. We want to see how things go. Even someone who's read the books is intrigued to watch how things play out in the show and how many things they alter. So far, we're only 2 episodes in the first season, but so far we're really liking what we're seeing, and we would definitely recommend you check this out if you're a fan of high fantasy at all. So I want to thank my co-host. Thank you so much, Nims.
Definitely good times.
Thank you so much, Bracey.
Always here for a great discussion.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Let me with you.
All right, audience, we will see you next time. Don't forget to check out the other offerings we have on the Comic Crusaders Network, because we have a lot of different podcasts and a lot of different broadcasts and a lot of different interviews. And if you are a geek at all, you will find something you love through Comic Crusaders. And we'll see you here next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers.